Into a little bit more advanced masking, and I have this bit of reference here, and we're going to recreate something layered like this, and it's pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Illustrator and kind of plan for it, but just to show you, these are some examples of some past students that have tried this assignment, and you can see all the layering that happens where these images appear to go in front and behind that type and that graphic object. Okay, so the first step, I'm just going to go into Illustrator, Command-Shift-P, and bring these images in, and this is kind of just my visual planning for it. Okay, so I'm going to bring these images in, and I'm going to change the transparency of both of them to multiply, just so the white doesn't affect what I'm trying to do. You know, although when I overlay them, you can see it's not perfect, but I don't really want them overlaid too much anyway. So I'm gonna just move them around a little bit. And again, this is just me planning for how I might have them in that Photoshop file. It's pretty good. And again, these will all be layered a little bit differently, but now I'm just gonna introduce that box shape. And I'm just going to add the graphics really quickly. Okay, so this is pretty good for a layout. Again, just doing it pretty quickly, and I am going to copy this into Photoshop. So I'm just selecting all these objects, Command-C. And when I go to Photoshop, I'm going to open up a new file, Command-N. And we're going to do 8.5 by 11 letter size, portrait orientation, and create. Now, right now, this is RGB. When you're creating these new files, Command-N, you can change the color over here. But if you forget to, you could always go to Image Mode, CMYK color. And now I have my file, and I'm going to Command-V this paste as a smart object, hit OK, and now I have this. So now I'm going to isolate these, and the quickest way to do it is probably like the object selection tool, but that's not perfect for this, so I'm going to show you. W is one of the object selection tools, or Shift W to get to this one. But when I use this, and again, when you use this marquee, you know you can use this space bar to move around, but sometimes it's not perfect and it might lose some of these finer edges here. So actually, if I want to really pick up that detail, I'm going to hit Command-D to deselect. I can use the wand tool, which is Shift-W, looks like this, a little wand tool. And then, you know, I'm setting my tolerance pretty low so that it doesn't pick up a lot of extra pixels. So that's at 5, and you can see it picks up a little bit more of that detail. The downside to this is you have to kind of go in and, you know, click some of these smaller areas. So I'm going to do that really quickly now on both of these objects, and then we'll bring them in. Okay, so now that I have my selection, since I'm selecting the white, I'm actually going to Command-Shift-I, invert that selection so that it's selecting the flower, and then I'm going to add my mask. I can go into select and mask, but for this portion, it doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm just going to use the mask as is. And now I have my flower object. I'm going to Control-click or right-click, convert it to a smart object, and then it's ready to bring into my file. I'm going to do the same thing on this one, and then bring it in the same way. Okay, now that I have that all selected, same thing, Command-Shift-I, because I selected the white. I want to invert the selection so that it's the flower. Click on my mask button, smart object, and that's ready to bring in. Now I'm going to just kind of keep this in the background here, kind of small, so I can just peek at it for that layout. And I'm going to drag these in just using the move tool. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to drag this in, get rid of this, and I'm going to save this one. I'll just save it on my desktop. And I'm going to move these around and try to get them to a similar kind of layout that I had in this file. And then I'm going to move my type in front, command bracket right a couple times. And I have all the elements in here that I want. So now the beauty of this is when I want to make a selection of one of these masks, or to mask I should say, I can, first thing I'm going to do is actually create a mask on top of this. Okay, so I'm going to add the mask to this, even though we don't have any selections going, so it's just a blank mask. But now I'm going to make a selection of this white flower image by command clicking on this thumbnail. And now what I can do is use these to mask out portions of this. So you can see it made that marquee selection around this, this white flower selection. And then if I use my black paintbrush, B brush tool, black is the foreground, and I'm painting in this mask area over here. And you can see, again, I'm going to use the hard edge brush for this because I want it to be precise. So now I'm just going to mask portions of this. And if you want, even though this is selected, you can hide this selection by Command H. Now, if this is the first time you tried Command H, it'll pop up a dialog box that asks you hide Photoshop or hide details. Make sure you don't click hide Photoshop because you want to set that default that you're hiding details. If you click hide Photoshop, that basically makes it that every time you hit Command H, it'll hide Photoshop instead, and that's not what we want. So I'm just trying to hide the details, and you can see if I do it again, the selection's still there, but this is just a way so I can, click anywhere on this, that this is selected, and I can see what's happening in my file now. So I can do that. And again, any of these things, like let's say I was like, oh, you know what, this middle bit here, I want this to go back. I can just X and change my foreground color to white and then paint white there. So then you can see this has this stalk going like over one part of the E, behind one part, and over another part. So it's really nice the way that you can control these things. Okay, and again, anytime you want to see where the selection is again, you could just Command H to see, okay, maybe I want to use this little part of the A over here. And again, make sure if you're trying to mask it out, black is your foreground color. So again, just that simple little layer, little bits of detail like that, add some nice layering into this. I'll do some more with the S over here. And again, you could always Command H to see what's revealed in these bits here and what you want to show. It doesn't have to be everything. So again, you can see just by doing that, I create this beautiful layering that happens inside all these shapes here. Just going back here again just to take a look, and that's pretty good. So I'm going to Command D, deselect, but that is the gist of this masking, and to get that, looking like it's going over parts of letters or going over some letters and behind other letters and that kind of thing. So again, and anytime you want to go back, you can make that selection again by hitting Option and clicking on it, and then going back in and painting with white. So I'm going to Command H to hide it again. So if you want, again, some of these things to, look like they're in front and in back, that's ways to do it. Okay? So for this part, I'm just going to go further and just mask things a little bit more so you can see more of that stuff happening, and I'm going to add some shadows to it. But that's basically the gist of what we're doing and how we can select these things. Now I'm going to add a layer above this. I'm going to embed it, and I'm going to use this for shadow. So I'm going to use my brush again, and I'm just going to use black, 100% black now. But you can see how this is kind of just clipped into this. So anything I add here, it's just going to add some shading in these areas. And I'll go back and I'll adjust the opacity of this later on, but you can see again just adding some shading to make it feel like a little dimensional. And I could always go to my blending mode that I like, linear burn or multiply, and just pull that back a little bit so it feels a little bit more natural. So you can see now it's like a little bit softer, but again, just adding it anywhere. And I can make my brush bigger or smaller to kind of, get into some of the more fine tuning of these details here if I want. Right, so again, just manually doing this with the brush tool, but super simple. And that, pretty easy, pretty simple, only took a couple minutes, but you can see how complex the layering looks in this now. And that's pretty much it.